And we're live.
Is it live or is it Memorex? Good evening, Ericka.
Hello, Robert.
Nice to be here. Happy Thanksgiving early.
Happy Thanksgiving, yes.
So as I like to start with, things have changed in after the election. There are rural counties now in California and in Illinois that want to secede, and they've had enough. They want to leave, right?
Wow. Okay.
Oh yeah, Iroquois County in Illinois, 73% voted the idea of banding together with other counties and to leave, right? And they call
it passed.
No. The new Illinois, look, they have drafted a constitution, but the state assembly would have to give them permission. Now,
okay.
Because I'm old, I know all about this. If you looked up New York Times in Killington, Vermont in 2004,
yes,
I was one of the people spearheading trying to get Killington to leave Vermont because it was originally chartered in New Hampshire. Didn't go over too well with Governor Douglas, who was the Republican governor at the time. But the times they are changing. So
wow.
But look, we have really,
gentlemen.
Yeah, it's and Trump's not even inaugurated yet, right? Of course, there's this whole thing now that they think that Biden's going to get us into World War III, which is a likely possibility, and then use that to declare martial law and nullify the election. Which even
like Zelensky did,
even in my tinfoil hat, that's a hard one for you. The war part, I agree with, but in any event, let's.
And hold on, forgive me, I just misspoke. So Zelensky didn't overturn an election; he just canceled an election. So
got it.
Dictators will do what dictators will do.
Exactly. So let's roll them. Hello, and welcome to Of the People, the death of DEI. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, more appropriately entitled Division, Exclusion, and Intolerance, is on life support, thankfully. DEI has been used not to bring us together, but to deepen the divide in this country. It is the leading tool or technique, if you will, to proselytize and try to brainwash most of America. And it also exposed more about what corporate America really is about. We're now seeing Harley Davidson, John Deere, Caterpillar, as recently, Ford, Boeing, a bunch of others, and as recently as yesterday, Walmart, the largest retailer in the U.S., which are backing away from DEI, trying to move their policies away from it, and getting back to what they really should get back to, right? But remember something. In October of 2008, then candidate Barack Obama, 5 days before election, famously said, "We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America." What was less reported at the time, and back in May of that year, Michelle Obama said, and let me quote this, "We're going to have to change our traditions, our history. We're going to have to move into a different place as a nation." DEI, which is the dogma, if you will, of this new religion of wokeism, has been inserted into every corner of America in the last 16 years in one fashion or another. It's been inserted in business from who they hire and the qualifications of who they hire. It's been inserted into culture and Hollywood and the movies that they make or the movies that they don't make, and who gets the role of this, not their qualifications. The government, the best word I can use, is infested with DEI acolytes whose job is to push an ideology and not necessarily do what's best for America. And let's not forget the military, which has also been affected or infected with DEI. Their job is to win. Their job is not to represent all the colors in the rainbow. America in November spoke loudly. They said no. They said, "We have had enough of this." This is about bringing America together, the majority of Americans. And let's make no mistake, America is still an imperfect country, and we are all imperfect. And yes, there's still racism. And yes, there are problems that we need to solve. But DEI, which again is the dogma of this new religion of wokeism, did nothing to bring us together. If anything, it was bringing us further. It was pushing us further apart. This election was about a lot of things. Two of the things that it was about was, number one, a return to normalcy. And number two, reestablishing meritocracy as a concept. Even if they weren't on the ballot, they really were on the ballot. Number one, for normalcy, get business out of politics. That's not their job. Their job is to put the best product out there for the best competitive price out there. That's called capitalism. And their job is to produce a profit for either their owners or their stockholders, right? That's their job in all of this. But meritocracy is the real key here. Striving to be the best that you can be is what America has always been about. Not lowering our standards for some abstract concept of, supposedly feel-good concept or of inclusion or fairness, because the question always is, who defines inclusion? Who defines fairness? The real simple question in all of this for this whole DEI nonsense really is a simple question. If you're going to the hospital to have surgery, do you want the best person possible? Or do you want someone whose only qualifications for getting that position might be the color of their skin, the religion that they pray to, or some other external factor, and not having earned it in their own way? Wokeism, ladies and gentlemen, has all the tenets of a new religion, down to the religious garb of the mask. And like all new religions, it's intolerant. And DEI was the tool that they used to do that. The non-believers had to be silenced or canceled, right? That's the whole Me Too thing. So it really was an old religion made new. But it's nice to see these corporations move away from that, because DEI is now DOA, and not a moment too soon for the majority of Americans. And that's the monologue. And Ericka, jump back in here. Joining us now, thrilled, absolutely thrilled, political commentator, TV host, syndicated TV host, syndicated radio host, entrepreneur, businessman, and I am very proud to say one of the key speakers for Israel Appreciation Day. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to Of the People, Armstrong Williams. Good evening, Armstrong.
It is a very nice, warm, peaceful evening in our nation's capital, and there's a spirit of harmony and expectations that's pervasive across our country. I think people are feeling it, and it really feels good, Robert and Ericka. It really does.
So there's hope again in America, and we still have our problems, but it's from someone who lives in that. So I'm down in the warm state of Florida, and she's in the warm state of Texas. I'm not sure Washington, D.C. would really be warm in the temperature sense.
Definitely warm here. It is very nice here this evening.
Nice. Well, we appreciate you joining us on the show. And as I mentioned to people, you were one of the key speakers for Israel Appreciation Day. So if we haven't said thank you before, we wanted to say thank you again.
Well, I want to thank you for having me. How about that?
Absolutely. I want to go back to the free press and start on this, because we were talking about free press as regards to reporting on the war, reporting on Israel. But it really, you and I are about the same age. I go back to the days of, not quite Edward R. Murrow, but I certainly go back to the days of, Walter Cronkite and those people who, when you never knew the political stripes of a journalist, right? That was probably one of the hallmarks. But when you look at DEI and through the lens of what's been reported in journalism and frankly, how they handled this election, you're a journalist, among other things. What's your take on all of this? I mean, isn't it a failure of journalism that they didn't just report the facts?
Listen, it is, I think what's important in the country now, Robert, is for us to to heal and find common ground. And you know, in a free press and freedom of speech are not just rights. They are safeguards for us. You know, they serve as barriers against the encroachment of government power, ensuring that no single entity can control the flow of information and ideas, not Congress, not businesses, not special interest groups, not foreign entities. And so freedom of speech is the foundation upon which other freedoms rest. Remember, we're one of the rare bodies, the fourth estate, that is mentioned in the Constitution. And you and I understand this, that without the ability to speak and publish freely, the citizenry cannot hold leaders accountable or defend their own liberties. And so the decline of rigorous debate, particularly in the media, I think, and I think you alluded to this in your monologue, it sort of reflects a cultural shift towards silencing dissent rather than just engaging with it. I don't know why. You know, you read these stories where there's this advocacy of whether you want to be associated with your loved ones during Thanksgiving because they took a position that you did not necessarily agree with. You know, in my family, I've got Republicans, I got Democrats, I got liberals, I got libertarians. No political debate could ever separate me from my family. In fact, if everybody agrees, Ericka, somebody's not necessary. Somebody's not learning. Somebody's not growing. What are we afraid of? We should welcome a healthy debate instead of just talking among ourselves. And so this mentality that you cannot associate with your loved ones, this is not progress, is what it is. It undermines democracy in and of itself. I mean, we should be able to have these debates, argue vigorously about it, but come November 5th, when the American people decide their leadership, we all become Americans. When Joe Biden won and Kamala Harris 4 years ago, it didn't matter what Donald Trump said about the steal and the fraud in the election. Joe Biden was my president. I respect the will of the people. I respect democracy. A part of that freedom is respecting the majority. And in America, the majority rules.
And I think you make a good point. And I point out to people, and you mentioned the fourth estate, which most people don't understand, but the fourth estate is obviously the news industry or the people that are supposed to hold the people in power accountable. My question really, though, is when did we move away from that? Because I would argue that with the advent of 24/7 news, right, we moved away from the news business to the business of news, because it used to be such a sacred obligation along with holding political office. And I think with I guess the word would be not customization, but the silo of news, people only listen to what reinforce what they already think. And that, to me, pushed the divide amongst people further apart.
Well, right? You know, I think the confirmation hearings of Robert Bork and Justice Thomas changed much in this country. I mean, the kind of tactics that we use, the propaganda, the machines that were on full display, because everyone thinks, you begin to see that even if someone disagree with you, if the media determines that you are a threat, they work with the political class, whether it's the Democrats who control the Senate Judiciary Committee, and they do everything they can to undermine that candidate. And so, you know, so Robert Bork got Bork. And so I think Justice Thomas came along, and then all of a sudden, you know, how they had the first round of hearings, he seemed to have no issues. We went away, and all of a sudden, 28 or 48 hours later, there was this Anita Hill bombshell. And then you had this, for the first time, as far as I'm concerned, you had a Supreme Court justice elected by the people because they saw this. And while the details were salacious and they did everything they could to malign him, the American people who had not been familiar with this kind of this crass, going into people's bedrooms, going into pitching women against men, and all of a sudden you got this culture of how men talk to women. And it also led to where we are with the Me Too movement and the sexual harassment. It started back then. It would start fomenting itself then. And then all of a sudden, we get to this point now. Donald Trump. Listen, 2016, Donald Trump defeated Hillary Rodham Clinton, and Hillary Rodham Clinton paid for that Steele dossier to create this illusion that Donald Trump was in collusion with the Russians and with Putin. And then you get these security people, 40 or 50 of them, signing this affidavit that was pushed by Anthony Blinken, to sort of give credibility to the fact that he's in bed with the Russians and then he's bought and paid for it, compromising the best interests of the American people. And then you realize that this was all paid for. It was propaganda. And you have Bob Woodward said he knew all along it was propaganda and there was no truth to it. So it created this divide. And so when Donald Trump came into power, the media felt his character. He did not have the political creds. He did not serve in government. So they took it upon themselves that they were going to make the decision what was best for the American people. Instead of presenting both sides of all the issues, they decided to become very one-sided because they decided that Donald Trump was a threat. Not much of it as of a threat now as they said he was during this second time around. And again, the media puts everything on the line to get into these polls. We saw what happened in Iowa, where the pollster who had this credibility for so long and forecasted and calling these elections, all of a sudden she said Donald Trump was down by 16 percentage points in Iowa. It changed the dynamics of the election on the weekends, but not the poll was showing this. And she put all her credibility on the line. And what happened on election day? She proved that she was bought and paid for, or she had another agenda. So the media just doesn't do its job before. They become the activists. They've sacrificed all their credibility. They're not fair anymore. They're just as biased. And so, and the other thing I've not mentioned, the advent of social media, where the media has fallen short, social media has stepped in the gap. Places like Instagram, X, TikTok, people believe they're more credible than the mainstream media. And who would have ever thought that Newsmax and News Nation would have better ratings than MSNBC? Their numbers would be better. They continue to crash, and the media is declining because they have no credibility. And you would think with the celebrities like Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Katy Perry, Bon Jovi, Bruce Springsteen, and the mainstream media, you would have thought that Donald Trump would have lost by a landslide. You would have thought that Taylor Swift would have brought all the young people out to the ballot box to support Kamala Harris, and she would win overwhelmingly. They also made you believe that there's this gender divide. There is this reproductive divide, that women will not necessarily support Kamala Harris, that Latinos, after the joke in Madison Square Garden where Donald Trump had this fundraiser, all of a sudden they said this Latino said something very offensive about Puerto Ricans, Latinos, that this is the game changer. Donald Trump has finally lost this election. It's a bad week. And look at what happened. The Latinos voted for Donald Trump. Black men voted for Donald Trump. Women voted for Donald Trump. Even the people, the protesters against Israel, who are pro-Palestinian and pro-Hamas, even in Michigan, the overwhelming number of Arab voters voted for Donald Trump. And so, again, you have no credibility because everything you said did not add up. And yet you have the betting market who called it almost 100%. You have people on social media who called it correctly. Even at midnight and 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, Rachel Maddow, Gayle King, and all the liberal elite newscasts refused to call it for Donald Trump. And you would have known, had the foot true been on the other foot, and the case had been Kamala Harris with this lead, they would have called that election before 11 p.m. at night. They were so emotionally distraught, so attached to this candidate, they could not even hide their feelings. So they just lost all credibility. They couldn't even control the angst and the anger and the disappointment and the devastation they had at the fact that she lost.
I think aptly put. Look, to me, the news media is no longer an honest broker, right? They're not trying to tell you about the news. They're trying to interpret the news for you, and they have an agenda. So what's the future of the mainstream media? I mean, obviously, like you, I've been following the ratings that have been tanking on both CNN and MSNBC and any of the cable news networks other than Fox or OAN or Newsmax or those kinds of things. Has the mainstream media, as they are aptly named, so lost credibility that there's no, I mean, does this morph into more social media than it does where people are going to get their news? Because I would argue one of the reasons Donald Trump won is because, like Reagan in 1980, he was able to go around the media at the time and speak directly to the American people. Reagan did it through his speeches and other things, but he didn't go through the media. Donald Trump was able to do it, not solely in large part by social media, but appearing on Joe Rogan, appearing on other podcasts and things like that was a way of going around the media. So is the media still, mainstream media, still relevant? And where do they go from here?
Well, the mainstream media definitely needs to be relevant. We need our media. We need our print media. We need our broadcast media. And maybe what the mainstream media will now is go back and do sort of an introspection, a reevaluation. I think with the fact that Comcast is really willing to dump MSNBC and CNBC, I think what you're hearing from Jeff Bezos at the Washington Post, we need more balance on our editorial page. We need more balance in our news. When you hear what Sean is saying at the Los Angeles Times, that his paper got it wrong, the way they positioned this election, the way they featured both candidates, they were totally out of touch with the American people. As an owner of the Baltimore Sun, we decided back in January that we would not endorse any candidate because it was unfair for us as a media organization to try to tell people whom to vote for. They should come to that with their own conclusion. And we did this long before Joe Biden decided to drop out the race and Kamala Harris became the nominee. I do think the press can find a way to gain back some of their credibility. And it's very simple. You have to be fair. You have to be balanced. You're not a coach. You are a referee. Present the facts on both sides. Allow people to come to their own opinion. Celebrate the opinions of all sides that represent all of Americans. Do stories that Americans care about, not stories that are sensational, and just tell the truth. They also felt, and even though I don't blame them for this for a large extent. I mean, Joe Biden misled us and his staff misled us, making us believe that he had his cognitive skills, that he could still function, that he's very capable of running the country. And look, we saw it every day. We saw it steadily decline. We never believed it. We saw the cognitive decline in the president. And instead of them holding the Biden staff and Biden and his family accountable for it, they decided to buy into it. We have an obligation to be transparent with the American people about the health of our leaders, especially someone like Joe Biden, when you could constantly see, and it wasn't until the debate with former President Donald Trump and now President-elect Donald Trump that he totally collapsed. Because listen, the truth has a biological advantage. It doesn't need the artifice of man to survive. It lives and breathes freely on its own. And you can lie and tell the American people whatever you want to tell them, but eventually what it is. And people saw it for themselves. They no longer could lie anymore, and it put them in an uproar. Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama had a coup d'etat. Let's call it what it was. It was a coup d'etat. If she had been primary, if she had been battle tested, she would have done much better. And look at Tim Walz, the worst mistake she could have made. In the first debate, he was lost in the sauce. And you know why he was clueless? Because they isolated him. They would not let him go out and fight on the battlefield. They would not allow him to make mistakes and get tested. And remember the strategy that Harris had at the beginning. We'll do the rope-a-dope. Because they hate him so much, they're going to vote for me on default. And then all of a sudden, the race got closer and closer, and it was razor thin. And all of a sudden, she had to get back out on the campaign trail and make the case. But guess what? Because she hired the Biden people refused to allow her to criticize their boss, Joe Biden. They refused to allow her to distance herself and differentiate the kinds of policies she would have versus Joe Biden. So she was crippled. She played it too safe. In fact, her best interview was on Bret Baier because she finally became a prosecutor. She got mad and she took the gloves off. Softballs never worked for her. And so therefore, she totally collapsed. Let's be honest about one thing. She never, in any platform, in any forum, had a clear, concise message that made any sense where she ever said anything. That's the bottom line. And what the American people learned after the election, that the American people, rather than a flawed man with 34 convictions, who was relatable to them, understood their struggle. Beyonce does not pay their bills. And they decided we're going to vote for leadership because we can relate. We're not looking for a perfect person because we're imperfect ourselves. They voted what they felt was the best interest to get the border crisis under control, to return them to some kind of stability, financial stability, to do something about the crisis and the different conflicts that were across seas that never happened on Donald Trump's watch, and also to believe they had somebody who would stand firm, have courage and background, and also put a stop to this craziness of gender affirming, biological males playing in female sports, and also this DEI. And they got just that.
Absolutely.
That is,
Ericka.
yeah, no, I'm well said. I keep laughing at the Beyonce comment because, Beyonce doesn't pay my bills, and it immediately made me think of the song Bills, Bills, Bills back from the 90s. But I think what you said was really something interesting, which is they think that the American people can be bribed with shiny objects. They think that we're stupid. They think the American people are stupid. And that's evidenced by the fact that they want to run their lives, the nanny state. And they think that parading, a P. Diddy party in front of you is going to make you want to vote for them. And, it's like, it is such an insult to the intelligence of the American people. And I don't know why they think they can get away with it over and over and over again.
Well, they clearly did.
The other thing, Ericka, is also the hypocrisy of it. You claim you care so much about women and respect for women, but yet all these women, whether it was Taylor Swift or Oprah or Beyonce, they knew P. Diddy. They found it so easy to condemn Donald Trump
or
in
Epstein.
terms of his accusation, but never once have you had them shine a spotlight on P. Diddy when we saw what he did at the elevator, beating a woman like she was some kind of animal. Did you hear them speak out against that? But yet they care so much about women. And then you have Cardi B gyrating, doing the twerk on stage. I mean, those are not the values of the American people. They cannot relate to it. You have to ask yourself, who's advising them? Whose values are these? But yet you care so much about women, but you cannot condemn someone like a P. Diddy and others. But yet you can find every fault in Donald Trump. And people can see through that hypocrisy.
Literally all those people up there were associated with Weinstein, Epstein, P. Diddy, all the predators. Right. And then you have women. When I saw Megan Thee Stallion and she couldn't even sing the song, that the song is so vulgar that she was up there basically just editing every other word. And then again, like you said, twerking. I was like, are we at a political rally? I don't understand. What is happening right now? Is insulting.
But look, the American people have spoken. The interesting thing, Armstrong. So back in, I want to say it was 2014, we did, ASIC did a poll, and it was a different kind of poll. And what we found, and we polled, I want to say about almost 5,000 people. So it wasn't a traditional poll where it's 900 sample. And we found that the youth supported two people more than anyone else: Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump.
Oh, wow.
Right? And we have the results of the polls. But what it said to me is they wanted even back then, there was this sort of current in America that wanted a disruption of what they were seeing, meaning what they were seeing in the political system did not align with what they thought government should or should not be doing for them, right? But you've also been vocal, and I'm going to segue to this, because you've also been vocal that Donald Trump in his second term should take a lesson from Lincoln, right? In his speech after the Civil War about trying to bring this country together, because as you pointed out, he's term limited. He has control of both houses at this point, and it should be, and we pulled up the article, your article, right? Should be with malice towards none and charity for all, right? So what advice do you give Donald Trump in that regard? Because look, he's certainly, I think, putting together a diverse cabinet. I think certainly loyalty is a big issue, but it's people who are focused on, not to coin a phrase, America first. And I think on some level, isn't that really what America voted for?
Well, listen, President Lincoln at the time, on the cusp of the ending of the Civil War and slaves finally being free, he faced a great crossroads. And, you know, the thing is that we have to understand Trump must understand that he is the president for all the people. That is why I was so happy that he allowed Joe Scarborough and his wife to come to Mar-a-Lago and talk about the freedom of the press and talk about talking to all sides and healing the wounds. And you mentioned something earlier in your monologue, merit and character matters. People don't want Trump to be vindictive. They don't want him to be petted. They want him to nominate cabinet members who have the merit, who have the character, who have the leadership, who could move us forward. And I do think Americans want outsiders. We don't necessarily believe that you need an Ivy League degree in order to serve in a cabinet position, because if people look at their lives and what's happened in this country over the last 4 years, what do they have to show for it? So I think even in our Constitution, our founding fathers envisioned not a permanent class of elected officials, but every 4 years or 6 years or 2 years, we would have a farmer, a housewife, a construction worker, a doctor, a lawyer. And so it brings fresh new ideas. It helps you innovate in ways that you've never been able to innovate before. And so I think people are struggling and needing help. They want the president to focus on their needs. They want him to deliver on his promises. They want him to stop the chaos at the border. It was a good sign today that Netanyahu and Hezbollah reached this tentative agreement that they would cease fire. We know it's not going to last, no matter how high our hopes will get. We know something is going to trigger it right now, but maybe this is just a season where we'll have a few months where innocent people are not dying. And they want Donald Trump to talk to Netanyahu and to Putin. You don't isolate him because of what you see him as a threat. Putin, you need to negotiate with him. You need to negotiate and talk to Kim Jong-un. You need to talk to these people. You cannot leave them alone. That is what leadership is about stepping into the enemy territory, stepping into uncomfortable territory. Because remember, America is still the economic engine of the world. They still need us. We are the world's guardrail. And so we can leave no dictator or none of these leaders behind. And so I think what the American people are saying to Donald Trump, focus on the needs of the people. Lead us, heal us, bring us back to our morality, bring us back to character. Don't allow schools to destroy our kids. Let them focus on the basics. Arithmetic, writing, reading, whatever, English. These other things that distract these kids who are barely reading now, and you look at the test scores all across the country, America is failing educationally and we're falling behind. That's what they want the president to do, is find his time healing this country and focusing on our needs for a change, placing Americans first.
Amen.
Absolutely. You know, you mentioned the supposedly impending peace agreement. It's really, I think it was a ceasefire agreement between Hezbollah and Israel, which hopefully will allow for some, if not all, the hostages to come home. Not because Hezbollah is holding hostages, of course, that's Hamas. But you've also been very vocal about it, and this has been a really sore spot for me because, like you, I lived through the Iran hostage crisis, and as you had written, it's nowhere in the media. We have American hostages, we have Israeli hostages too, but let's focus just on American hostages that are still being held and no one knows their name and it's not in the media. And I facetiously say to people that there are no hostages. And they look at me with sort of askewed, and I said, look, if there were hostages, there would be on every page, front page of the newspaper. There would be a drumbeat to get them home. The U.S. government would intercede. And since none of that happened, there must not be any hostages, which of course is sort of cynical and a little sarcastic. But why is it that, and again, we're going to end this where we started in the American press. Why is it that the press doesn't report on it? There are 7 hostages. And for you, because it was in your article, bring this up on the screen, Ericka. So here are the names of the hostages. No one knows their names. These are the U.S. hostages. How is it we still have U.S. hostages and it's not front page of every newspaper every day like it was in the Iran hostage crisis? Makes me crazy.
You know, and we should say their name. If they were transgenders who were being held hostage, that they were Americans who happened to be Black being held hostage.
Basketball player.
They're a football player, Brittany Griner.
Yeah.
You know, they never stopped.
Oh, bring Brittany home.
And they even traded Victor Boot, an arms dealer, who's still out there selling arms, arming people where they're annihilating each other in these countries, especially in the diaspora. You never stop saying the name of Brittany Griner. Why? This is the unfortunate situation, is that anti-Semitism is so rampant in the country today. It's because people have dumbed down Jews to a point where people feel is that we should not be concerned because we want to believe that they're the new apartheid in the world. They forget, you know, it's just like no different than the International Criminal Court issuing an arrest for Netanyahu and his former defense minister. Rarely did you hear after October 7th that they issued arrest warrants for the Hamas leaders, even with Al-Qaeda, ISIS. You never hear the same amount of anger in terms of saying that these people are committing atrocities and killing innocent people. It's because they're Jews. I never thought in my lifetime that the Holocaust could ever happen again. But remember the great words during that time. They came for the Christians and I said nothing. They came for the gays and I said nothing. And then they came for me and it was too late. We must speak up. We must speak up because Israel represents the principles of freedom and self-determination in a region where these values are scarce. They're scarce. Yes. Supporting such an ally aligns with Americans' commitment to liberty. It's just a fact. The survival of Israel, Robert and Ericka, is not just an Israel concern. It is a test of the West's resolve to defend its values against forces that would absolutely obliterate them. When we fight for Israel, because you better believe it's not enough for them to have what happened on October 7th in Israel. What they really wanted to happen, where they wanted to happen, is on American soil. That's what they really want to happen. They want to see another one of those World Trade Center buildings crumble. They wanted to see the White House crumble. They wanted to see the U.S. Capitol crumble. That's what they want. That's the image they want. Their ultimate goal is to bring that same kind of terrorism to American soil. So when we fight it there, we don't have to fight it here.
That's right.
And I actually, as we have said for a long time, and I agree 100%, Armstrong, this isn't about just the Jews. This is about Judeo-Christian values. Mm-hmm. As I say to my friends, right, if they drive the Jews into the sea, I said, you're Christian? He said, yes. I said, you're next, right? Because it's about Judeo-Christian values. Right. And the two things I think that they're really trying to do, so Iran is trying to eliminate Israel. That's a physical thing. But they're trying to eliminate culturally Western values or Judeo-Christian values. So there's two different battles going on here. And I think it's instrumental that I think was it today or yesterday that the UN fired someone on their Human Rights Commission because they wouldn't sign off on their definition of genocide, which was only aimed at Israel, right? She objected, so they fired her, right? So it speaks to the larger issue that this is a battle of civilizations, unfortunately, or a battle of values. And I think that's part and parcel of what swept Donald Trump into office back in 2016 and now. But it's about Judeo-Christian values.
Well, here's the good thing. The American people are awakened. They've awakened a sleeping giant. They're more educated. They're more in tune. They cannot be as manipulated and indoctrinated as the past. And you will hear people from all overseas, from every corner of the universe. I was talking to a friend of mine who watched the elections return in Trinidad, and he was just stunned. There were Trinidadians who had a pro-Trump rally, watch party, rooting for him, pockets of people all over the world, because the world needs strong leadership on the world stage, especially the American president. Now, some will say, listen, people do not care anything about Vice President Harris's race. That's just, I don't know, that's just a distraction. But I will admit, maybe to a certain extent, her being a woman. I'm not going to say Americans are chauvinistic, but I'm sure when you look at the conflict that's going on the world stage, when you look at the challenges that America is facing today, I do think that could have played a role. But if she'd had a message, if she'd had clear separation of herself from Joe Biden, if she talked about what she would do to control the border, how she would pay for the economic plan, the return Americans to some stability, what she would do with these out of control prosecutors and state attorneys across the country that allow these repeat offenders, these juvenile repeat offenders, to go back on the street and wreak havoc on people's lives. I think if she could have acquitted herself in a very articulate and a very policy way, she had a chance. She could have erased the fact that she was a woman, but the fact that she did not answer, it even loomed larger at the polls. And I think just in the end, the American people said they're going to give Donald Trump because they knew exactly what he would do because they saw him 4 years ago. And the one thing you can say about Trump, he's authentic. He may say the craziest things in the world.
That's the word. He's authentic.
Yeah, he's authentic. You know exactly what they rather the devil they know than the devil they would have had to get to know. That's the difference. They got the devil they know.
And Kamala Harris was not authentic. I think that's really the word.
No.
And I think the other thing you put your finger on is she was not battle tested. She was crowned, right? And America likes competition. They like people who fight to win or fight for their goals, and that goes back to meritocracy. That goes back to sort of that American spirit, whether it's those Western values, John Wayne and the rugged Western, or those kinds of things. And America, I think, has a sense of fairness and a sense of fair play. And when that's violated, they may not speak up, but they take note. And I don't think she was authentic. I think she was crowned. And you remember that sometimes you're not voting for someone, you're voting against someone or something.
Let me just say this about the vice president. I think her finest moment was her concession speech the next day. And let me tell you why.
Why?
Because I don't believe had Donald Trump lost the election, he would have been as gracious and would have accepted it so willingly, the results. Whether you want to admit it or not, I just think the truth is the truth. I don't think he's that gracious, that magnanimous. I think it would have gone on. It would have been protracted with lawyers. And so because she won, you didn't have to worry about lawyers and the delays. We knew. People thought it would be weeks. We knew literally within 24 hours that Donald Trump would be president. Yeah. We would control the House and the Senate, no matter how long it may have taken in Pennsylvania and other states to tabulate the margins. In the end, we knew what it was going to be. And so it was the most peaceful transition before the real transition on January 20th, 25. So I give her credit. And Hillary Clinton did the same when she lost to Donald Trump. Al Gore did the same when he lost to George Bush. They said, no person is bigger than the Constitution than we, the people. We do it for democracy and we do it for America. We lost, we heal this nation, we move on. And I give her credit for that.
Amen.
Well said. And let's hope that Donald Trump does emulate Lincoln in his second term and tries to bring America together, right? Because we have so much more in common than separates us. And I think that America is pretty sick and tired of being divided. So I think we go into a different sort of hope after January 20th, that we find a way to come together as America, because Lord knows there's so much division out there and it's unhealthy. It's unhealthy for the country. Armstrong, I want to thank you for taking time out. I know how busy you are because you are into, all the things that you do. Thank you so much.
This is important. That's important. Yes, I'm so honored to be here.
Well, someone of your voice and your stature cannot thank you enough for taking the time to come on Of the People and just to talk a little bit about the elections. But last thing I want to do is, Ericka, bring up those names again of the hostages, because bring the hostages home and bring them home now. These are the people, ladies and gentlemen: Idon Alexander, Itai Chen, Sagwe Dekel Chen, Gadi Hagai, Judy Weinstein Hagai, Omer Nutra, and Keith Siegel. Ladies and gentlemen, these are U.S. hostages that have been held for over a year. Bring them home, and bring them home now. Armstrong, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, you guys, thank you for watching so far. Make sure you like this video, leave a comment, let us know what you think, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. Stay right here. We'll be right back.